In classic Hollywood, the camera never lied. What you saw as brilliant acting was sometimes something far more real. Behind those unforgettable scenes were actors who weren't performing pain, they were living it. Tears that weren't scripted. Fear that wasn't rehearsed. Passion that broke every boundary between fiction and truth. Today, we reveal 9 legendary stars whose most iconic moments were never really acting at all. Actor number 1: Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando's portrayal of Stanley Kowalski is still considered one of the most powerful performances in film history. But what many don't know is that the raw intensity audiences witnessed on screen was far closer to reality than pure performance. During filming, Brando worked alongside Vivien Leigh, who was privately battling deep emotional and mental struggles. As their characters spiraled into conflict and collapse, the line between fiction and reality began to blur. Director Elia Kazan noticed something unusual. Leigh's trembling hands, her tearful breakdowns, her fragile state were not choices made for the camera. They were genuine. Brando, fully immersed in his character, responded with equally unfiltered intensity. Those explosive confrontations you see on screen weren't just dialogue being delivered, they were 2 actors caught in a storm of real human emotion. Brando later admitted he felt an unexpected weight watching Leigh unravel before him, as though he were witnessing something far more personal than acting. This wasn't a performance built on technique alone. It was raw vulnerability, captured permanently on film. And it's exactly why, decades later, this scene still leaves audiences speechless, because what they were watching wasn't fiction. It was truth. Actor number 2: Marilyn Monroe. For Marilyn Monroe, The Misfits was never just another film role. It became a mirror reflecting the turmoil of her real life, unfolding in front of the camera for the entire world to see. By the time filming began, Marilyn was quietly battling deep exhaustion, sleepless nights, and the painful collapse of her marriage to screenwriter Arthur Miller, the very man who had written the film's script. The emotional weight she carried off-screen didn't stay behind the scenes. It walked straight into every frame. In several of the film's most heartbreaking moments, particularly the scenes where her character breaks down in tears, something extraordinary happened. Those weren't performed emotions built through technique or rehearsal. They were unfiltered, unguarded, and painfully real. Marilyn wasn't recalling grief to access a character, she was living it in real time, and the camera simply captured what was already there. Co-star Clark Gable and members of the production crew later described the experience as almost uncomfortable to witness. Watching Marilyn perform during this period felt less like observing an actress at work, and more like glimpsing something deeply personal, a woman quietly unraveling under the weight of her own life. Tragically, The Misfits would become the final film Marilyn Monroe completed before her death the following year. What audiences experienced on screen wasn't polished Hollywood performance. It was raw human vulnerability, immortalized in film, a haunting reminder of the person behind the icon. Actor number 3: Al Pacino. The restaurant assassination scene in The Godfather remains one of the most tense and unforgettable moments in cinematic history. But what audiences didn't realize was that the fear they saw on Al Pacino's face wasn't something he was performing. It was something he was genuinely experiencing. Director Francis Ford Coppola took an unconventional approach to prepare Pacino for this pivotal scene. Rather than simply directing him through the motions, Coppola kept him isolated in character for hours before filming began, allowing the pressure and anticipation to build naturally. The scorching heat from the studio lights, the heavy silence before the gunfire, and the sheer emotional stakes of the moment created something no script could manufacture. When the cameras finally rolled, Pacino's trembling hands and the sweat glistening on his face weren't the result of makeup or technique. His racing heartbeat, his visible anxiety, his hesitation before pulling the trigger, all of it was authentic, adrenaline-fueled human response. This wasn't simply Michael Corleone's transformation from reluctant son to ruthless leader being acted out. It was Al Pacino himself, fully consumed by the moment, feeling every ounce of tension his character was meant to carry. Pacino later reflected that he hadn't performed fear in that scene, he had truly felt it. That single distinction is what elevated this moment from great acting into something timeless, blurring the boundary between performance and reality in a way few scenes in film history ever have. Actor number 4, James Dean. James Dean's performance in Rebel Without a Cause wasn't simply the work of a talented young actor following a script. It was, in many ways, a direct reflection of his own personal pain, emotions he had carried with him long before he ever stepped onto that set. Dean grew up navigating a difficult relationship with his father and carried unresolved emotional wounds from a turbulent childhood. When his character shouted, broke down, or expressed raw frustration on screen, those weren't emotions manufactured for the camera. They came from somewhere far more personal. In the film's now legendary confrontation scene, where Dean's character cries out in anguish toward his parents, his heartbreak and anger weren't the product of careful rehearsal or technical skill. According to those who worked closely with him, Dean often moved beyond the written script entirely, drawing directly from his own memories to bring his character's pain to life. Director Nicholas Ray later revealed that Dean's approach to the role went far beyond traditional acting methods. Co-stars on set admitted they sometimes felt a quiet discomfort watching him work, as though they were witnessing something deeply private unfold in front of them rather than a performance. This raw, unfiltered authenticity is precisely why Dean's portrayal continues to resonate with audiences decades later. It wasn't simply skilled method acting, it was genuine emotional truth, captured on film, that transformed James Dean into one of cinema's most enduring and haunting legends. Actor number 5, Vivien Leigh. The chemistry between Vivien Leigh and Clark Gable in Gone with the Wind has been celebrated for generations as pure cinematic magic. But behind one of the film's most iconic moments, something far more genuine was taking place than audiences ever realized. During the filming of the now legendary kissing scene between Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara, Clark Gable's commanding presence and passionate intensity caught Vivien Leigh completely off guard. She later admitted that his forceful embrace left her genuinely dizzy and emotionally shaken, a reaction that was never written into the script. What the camera captured in that moment wasn't a carefully rehearsed romantic performance. It was Leigh's authentic surprise and tension, emotions that happened to align perfectly with her character's own inner turmoil. Off-screen, Leigh had often described Gable as charming yet quietly overwhelming, and that real, unspoken dynamic between them found its way directly into the scene. This wasn't simply two skilled actors delivering polished performances. It was the unpredictable spark of real human chemistry, unfolding naturally in front of the camera. Few people watching at the time realized that Leigh's reactions weren't calculated choices. They were spontaneous and real. Decades later, this scene remains one of the most celebrated moments in Hollywood history, not because it was flawlessly acted, but because it captured something far rarer: two powerful personalities colliding in a moment that blurred the line between character and truth. Actor number 6, Elizabeth Taylor. The on-screen chemistry between Elizabeth Taylor and Montgomery Clift in A Place in the Sun has long been regarded as one of Hollywood's most tender and believable romances. But what audiences didn't know was just how far that connection extended beyond the script. During filming, Montgomery Clift found himself genuinely captivated by Taylor's warmth and presence, even as he privately struggled with his own personal and emotional battles. Their scenes together carried a quiet, natural tenderness that felt far too authentic to have been entirely rehearsed. In the film's famous lakeside scene, the longing exchange between their characters wasn't purely a product of skilled performance. Those who worked closely with them noticed something deeper in Clift's expressions, a truth that technique alone couldn't manufacture. Elizabeth Taylor later confirmed this herself, admitting that she deeply adored Monty, often describing him as a soulmate rather than simply a co-star. That real emotional bond between them quietly shaped every glance and gesture captured on film, giving their scenes an authenticity rarely seen in traditional Hollywood romances. When Clift's character looked at Taylor with tenderness and longing, it wasn't purely constructed performance. It reflected something genuine happening between the two of them. This unspoken emotional connection is what transformed A Place in the Sun into one of classic Hollywood's most quietly powerful love stories, one built not just on skillful acting, but on real feeling that found its way onto the screen. Actor number 7, Ingrid Bergman. The emotional depth of Casablanca's unforgettable final scene wasn't purely the result of skillful acting. In many ways, it was genuine, unscripted emotion captured at exactly the right moment. Ingrid Bergman, who portrayed Ilse Lund, revealed that she had no idea until the very final moments of filming which man her character would ultimately choose to stay with. Director Michael Curtiz made this decision intentionally, keeping Bergman uncertain so that her expressions of confusion and heartbreak would appear completely genuine rather than rehearsed. When Ilse stands at the airport, tears welling in her eyes as she says goodbye, that uncertainty and sorrow weren't performance choices. They were real emotional responses from an actress who, in that moment, truly didn't know how her character's story would end. Bergman's expression carried an authentic mixture of surprise, loss, and quiet admiration, precisely what the scene demanded, yet none of it manufactured. This uncertainty translated into one of cinema's most iconic farewells. Audiences believed every tear and every glance because there was nothing calculated about them. Bergman wasn't simply portraying heartbreak, she was experiencing genuine emotional conflict in real time, unaware of her own character's fate. That authenticity is precisely what elevated this scene beyond ordinary filmmaking. It transformed a simple goodbye into one of the most emotionally resonant moments in film history, proving that sometimes the most powerful performances aren't performances at all, they're truth, captured on camera. Actor number 8, Janet Leigh. The shower scene in Psycho remains one of the most iconic and terrifying moments in film history. But what many don't realize is that Janet Leigh's chilling reaction wasn't simply the result of exceptional acting skill. Director Alfred Hitchcock deliberately withheld specific details from Janet Leigh about exactly when the attack would begin or how intense the staged moment would feel. This calculated uncertainty meant that when the scene finally unfolded, her panic, trembling, and visible terror weren't purely performed reactions, they were genuine responses to an unpredictable and disorienting moment. Leigh later revealed just how deeply the experience affected her, admitting that she avoided taking showers for months following the film's release. The combination of cold water, harsh lighting, and the scene's now legendary shrieking musical score created an atmosphere that felt disturbingly real, even though she knew she was on a controlled film set. Hitchcock's mastery wasn't just in his direction, it was in his psychological approach to eliciting authentic emotion from his actress. By keeping Leigh uncertain and unprepared, he captured something far more powerful than a scripted performance could ever achieve. What audiences witnessed wasn't simply a talented actress skillfully portraying fear. It was a woman experiencing genuine shock and vulnerability in real time, a moment so authentic that it helped define an entire genre and cemented itself as one of the most powerful scenes in cinematic history. Actor number 9, Clark Gable. Clark Gable's portrayal of Rhett Butler remains one of the most magnetic performances in classic Hollywood history. But behind his commanding on-screen presence was something far more personal than skilled technique alone. During the filming of Gone with the Wind, Gable brought an intensity to his scenes with Vivien Leigh that went beyond careful direction or rehearsed choreography. In their famous kissing scene, his passionate and forceful embrace wasn't simply a calculated performance choice designed to fit the moment. It reflected Gable's own natural confidence and commanding presence, qualities that defined him both on screen and off. Those who worked closely with him on set often described Gable as effortlessly charismatic, someone whose real personality frequently blurred the line between himself and the characters he portrayed. That authenticity is precisely what gave his performance as Rhett Butler such lasting power. Audiences weren't just watching an actor deliver lines, they were witnessing genuine charisma unfold naturally in front of the camera. This natural, unforced intensity became one of the defining elements of the film's success. Gable didn't need to manufacture Rhett Butler's confidence or magnetism through technique alone, it was already part of who he was. Decades later, this remains one of the reasons Gone with the Wind continues to captivate audiences. What they witnessed wasn't purely constructed performance, but a rare moment where actor and character became almost indistinguishable from one another.